morning, brothers and sisters. We welcome you this morning to this continued conversation on Sunday morning for Trinity's Adult Forum titled Trinity and Race. We have been spending a number of weeks looking at the history of Trinity Church and the history of Trinity Church, especially around the topic and understanding of our relationship to race. This has been a wonderful discovery of history. What we're doing here has largely been an inside, if you will, family conversation, a way for us as a community, a family, to know better who we are and the influences on our community from the start of our community way back in 1849. We have had a number of sessions. I encourage you to go back and look at all of them if you haven't had an opportunity to do that. We started at the creation of this parish in 1849, the period of the first rector, Jarvis Buxton, up until the mid-1890s. Recognized we're missing a lot of information and records from the early 1900s. And then looking at the start of Jack Tooton's rectorate in 1947 down into the civil rights era. Last week, we were blessed to welcome lifelong Trinitarian Liz Colton, who's with us again today, in looking at Trinity's place in the modern civil rights era in the 1960s and what was going on at that point. Now we welcome back Dr. Liz Colton, and we welcome back a community. We welcome to our session today a community leader, Oralene Simmons, and who was a major part of the city of Asheville. Today we're spreading out a little bit and we're asking questions about the history and of race in our wider community in the city of Asheville. So Liz and Oralene, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to ask Liz to start us off.
I'm really honored and pleased to have a friend, a longtime friend, and a leader in the whole of Western North Carolina and actually in the world, Dr. Oralene Anderson Graves Simmons. And she is actually from Madison County, and but she had to be bussed in during segregation into Buncombe County. She and I were together in the very early days. She was a founding member, and I was an early founding member of the Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality. And then she went on to be a real pioneer in civil rights as one who integrated Mars Hill College in Madison County. So I would like first with Oralene. Oralene, you know, you and I talk a lot about what we remember, and we both remember some things together and of course many things separately too, of what segregation was. And we've talked about how, you know, many people can't even imagine it. So I would like to ask you just to give us a quick picture of, if you quick is a shame, but anyway, of what segregation meant from your viewpoint as an African-American in this community.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Segregation at that time meant for me was separation, not equal, a feeling of not having that human dignity of equality. It meant separate schools. It meant separate water fountains to drink from, separate restrooms, unfair unfair labor practices, not getting sometimes adequate education, having to travel a long way to go to school, um, living in different neighborhoods, and of course, worshiping in different churches. I've heard it said so many times that Sunday was the most separated day in the week.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, when we can remember the big ruling that started to have some kind of change, that was in 1954, the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court ruling, which called for an end to segregation of schools and segregation in general. But one of the things, so in 1959 and 60, when ASCORE was starting, Asheville Student Committee on Racial Equality, the schools were still segregated. And in fact, we didn't even have places that we could meet together for the whites and black students to form this group together. There were no restaurants where we could eat together. And it was just the beginning of the sit-in. Can you tell us just a little, Oralene, about, what it was that you were a leader from the very beginning in this civil rights movement here. And so what sort of clinched you and brought you on board or made you a leader in that early on?
Well, one of the reasons was that I realized at an early age the the conditions that we were living in and living under when I had to be bused across county lines just to go to school, and um, and riding that 45-mile round trip. We passed by many schools, but our bus couldn't stop there because of of our the color of our skins. Um, and it was also my thought of how can I make a change? And growing up in Madison County, as you had mentioned, in Morris Hill, there was a Morris Hill College that I passed by every day on my way to the school bus stop. And it was the only college I knew. I knew I wanted to go to college when I finished high school. So of course I said, I'm going to this school.
Hmm.
And I also had the long lifetime life of knowing that my great grandfather that helped with the building of the college, but served time in prison as collateral till that building was paid off, was buried on the campus there.
Wow.
So I had this, I had this thought, and I kept on to that thought that this was one thing that I could possibly do. I wanted to go home when I finished high school. I wanted to go to this school, and all of the other experiences of segregation. I wanted to try to be a part of a movement that was going to bring about change for human dignity and equality, where we all could enjoy all of these same things in our lives.
Um, Oralene, when you took this truly amazing step, and I remember because I was involved in the civil rights movement, because in my case, as a little girl, I kept seeing there were differences and I didn't understand it. And I saw the segregated water fountains and the segregated libraries. I mean, I went all the time to beautiful Pack Memorial Library on Pack Square. And yet the so-called colored library was around the corner. And there was nobody could go. African Americans could not come into this library. That was very strange and upsetting. And the buses were segregated with people being forced to the back of the bus. And so I was aware of that. And I remember knowing that I heard, had gone off to Mars Hill. And so can you tell us a little about that experience? Because that was, I mean, scary and so courageous that you did that.
Yes, and I want to go back to that library before I get back
Yeah.
to Mars Hill. We weren't always able to check out the books that we needed to do special reports in high school because those books were not available to us at the Black Library.
Yep.
We would have to make the librarian had to make a request for those books to be sent down to this library. And then we could check that book out because we couldn't go to the Pack Library. I remember I needed a particular book to do a report, and I didn't get my report in on time. I told my high school teacher, and she said, well, what you need to do is to go to Pack Library and check that book out. And I said, I can go there and check that book out. She said, if you want to get your grade, go there and get the book. I did go, but I was not given the book. I was chastised and told not to come back there again, to go back down to what they call the colored library, wait on her to send the book down, and then do my report. And of course, that librarian at the Black Library also got a scolding for me trying to check out a book there. But these were some of the things that we experienced. Yes, when I graduated from high school, I was ready to go back. I wanted to go home and go to college at home. And when I first made the application, it was not accepted, and I had to push
at Mars Hill College in Madison
at
County.
Mars Hill College, now university, and I had to push a little further on that because when my application was turned down, I found out that white students were still being accepted. I knew that I had to be brave, that I had to be very brave if I was accepted and if I could be a student there. And one of the reasons why I had these feelings was because of what was happening throughout the South, with feelings running high about African Americans attending all white schools. But I was determined to get an education there, and I felt like after I was admitted that if I couldn't get up in the morning and make these classes, even with the discrimination that I was experiencing there, that I would have been letting a lot of people down. I just felt like there were some that were counting on me, breaking down these barriers so that African Americans did not have to travel all the way to eastern part of North Carolina to go to the the historical African American schools. So
Yeah.
Do you
Can
mind
you,
giving,
yeah, go
do you
ahead.
mind, do you remind reminding us, and some certain people in certain generations will remember this timeline, but the different, how, Brown versus Board of Education, 1954. How long did it take for there to be integrated schools in Asheville?
I think it was probably about 1964.
Yeah,
Wow,
that
10
was
years.
but they were very small. The high school was not fully integrated till 1970, the class of 1970.
Yes, that is
15 years.
true.
15
Yeah.
years. Wow.
Oralene, I was wondering if you could just, if, do you remember going to In the Oaks for some of those meetings? Do you remember those when we had the A score and met out out in Black Mountain?
I think I probably attended about one.
Mm-hmm.
It was that was one of my first meetings. I
Yeah.
remember when I asked James Ferguson if I could be a member
Right.
of
And he was a founder of the,
yes. And
and
I told him about my dreams and aspirations of what I wanted to do in the civil rights movement, what I had experienced, what I had witnessed, my long time goals. And he said, "Oh yes, we need somebody
Mhm.
like you."
wow.
It-
Well, that was way back in 59, 60.
Can you share, because I know a number of our members and folks viewing this may not know what ACE score is, and they're kind of not from Asheville or moved here later in life. Can you tell us a little bit about ACE score and your role and its role in the civil rights movement in Asheville? I think that's some history that may be really valuable and useful.
Sure. It was a group of teenagers
Mhm.
from the all Black school, Stevens Lee High School. There were a few from Allen High School. And then there was Liz and maybe a couple of other students from the all white Lee Edwards School. And we were
And Allen High School was a private school for African American girls here.
Okay.
yes. So we were the members um, of this group that wanted to bring about a change for human dignity in our community. We selected projects and ideas that we wanted to work on to bring about this change and recognize things that we wanted to change, such as the integration of the library,
Mhm.
uh, the sit-in demonstrations at the lunch counter, um, integrating other public facilities such as the recreation park
Mhm.
and pool. We also we picketed a grocery store
Yep.
because they wouldn't even hire an African American as a bag boy.
Mhm.
Uh,
Hmm.
we were successful in doing all of these things, and the unique thing about this group were that we were all teenagers. We
Mhm.
did have some adult advisors, such as some of the ministers. There was Will Rowland, who owned a jewelry store, and he had been trained in nonviolent um, methods and techniques under Martin Luther King. And he was the one that brought this training to us of learning how to conduct ourselves for a non-violent movement, how we negotiate, how we hope to come up with this resolution of a win-win for everyone.
Uh,
Yeah, and
what
one of those ministers, David, as you know, was Mr. Tootin on the white side and Bishop Henry,
Yes.
and our Episcopal Young Church, they called it MUNs, leaders, one of whom was Phyllis Franz at Trinity.
Oralene, could you share with us what the response in the broader community was to some of these direct actions that ASCORE took? Was it kind of what we may have in our image from the more well-known pictures of the civil rights movement? How did y'all experience those actions in our community?
There were some people in the community that were very proud of us and that said, "You young people go on and you do this for us." There were some people that were afraid for us. There were some folk that felt that there possibly could be some kind of repercussion. There were folk that said, you need to stay in your place."
Mm.
Um, I know that there were folks such as our high school teachers that could not participate in these things, but supported us from afar. And there was also domestic workers that that were hesitant about us taking such big moves, but others that just applauded us all the way. And we were able to accomplish these things for all of them to be a part of.
So deeply powerful, and as we say, we're talking about history. So this history is so important for us to touch and uh, sit with, really. And then, Oralene, do you mind? I mean, you have been part of the community your whole life,
And a leader, such a leader.
and a leader of this community in your whole life, uh, in, going on to develop, if I've got this right, the Martin Luther King Jr. Association here in Asheville. Is that right?
That
Which
is correct.
is still one of the most well-known association MLK associations in the country, and certainly thank you for your continued ministry, is what I call it, and leadership there. Yeah. One of the things that we want to try to get at in this, and probably our next week session as well, is this whole question of what's next. Liz, uh, uh, I don't know if I have this right or wrong. I probably have it wrong at some level, but you all in ASCORE had specific pieces that you were working on. You were working on an integration of certain institutions, the library, the pool, it feels in 2020, we're working on deeper work now. I mean, it's like what I call, what's been called, the need to transform hearts. Our own presiding bishop, of course, here for the Episcopal Church, an African-American man, Bishop Curry, has said, I've heard him describe it as, I wouldn't change anything for the world about the civil rights movement. We changed a lot of laws. Looking back now in 2020, he will say something to the effect of, I'm not sure we transformed a lot of hearts. And so we have some work to do, lots of work to do, really, and transformation of the heart. He will say that this is the role of the church, is transformation of the heart. And so can you give us an idea of what type of work is being done now in the city of Asheville for equality, for racial equality, for understanding, for just growing our life together as a community and our sense of racial equality?
You want to start with that one, Liz?
No, I'd rather, Oralene, you go ahead, because yeah, I think he wanted you to do that.
Um, yes, I do see that we are changing some with the different. Well, we're hearing the word diversity over and over again now, as to where we have moved into this spot where there are different positions that are being open within the schools and the colleges and the government that has the word diversity attached to it. Human rights, social justice, and etc. And I am a firm believer in we have to know where we came from in order for us to move forward. Therefore, we are finding ourselves uh, learning about African American history, about the civil rights movements, Dr. King and others whose shoulders we now stand on. And for some people, this is their first time hearing some of these things, even though they were right here among us with all of it. We see a number of different programs being implemented now, such as the Reformation, and also in some of our decisions to remove the Vance Monument. And I think that it is up to us to catch on to this energy of where changes can be made with all of us together. We cannot ever bring about change within somebody's heart. This is something that they are going to have to do from within to change that. What we can do is, even with making yourself a committee of one, to have some of these tough conversations with people about asking them to change their heart. Some of them have always held on to the beliefs from, yes, sometimes their churches, their family, their neighbors, and where where they live. We're going to have to be open, and we're going to have to be honest about that. We're going to have to build on our commonalities of what we have in common, but being able to respect our differences in order to help to change within their heart. And wouldn't it be beautiful if we could all catch and hold on to onto this energy that's going to take us to the other side, and we will never have to have conversations like the ones that we are having today.
Yeah, great, beautiful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Simmons. So I think that as we're saying is, what we're part of what we're doing here is in our own communities, taking very small steps. But but you mentioned, we have to know our history. in order to move forward. We did have, I had a great session with Dr. Fox on the work that's being done in the Remembrance Project here in Asheville. And that was it's really one of the main underlying principles of the Remembrance Project. Until we know what has happened among us and what that history is, can we really move forward in a new way and be agents of transformation? And so, as you say, it's so very vital. And I appreciate your words about. I'd love to have more time to talk with you about, the nonviolent way of being and being able to make change. That, as Dr. King said, employing nonviolent principles is a powerful action. It's not sitting back and doing nothing. It's actually a powerful witness and a powerful action. And I still am committed to that way of being in a world that is less and less committed to that way of being. So I want to thank you again for being part of this. Liz, thank you so much. And this is, again, one more step in our life and conversation in working toward wholesome next steps in our life together and toward transformation. So, well, thank you. God bless you. Brothers and sisters, be sure to join us next week, where we'll have another community leader with us to look at even in a more broad way, the continued place of Trinity in the city of Asheville, and in this conversation of the intersection of our history and race. God bless. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.